So in a little less than 2 weeks, on January 20th, Donald Trump will become officially the 45th president of the United States. And with that, it also means that our current president, Barack Obama, will be exiting office and riding off into the sunset. Now, since we've almost officially come to the end of Obama's presidency, it's now that we can begin to examine his legacy. It's the successes, the failures of his presidency, and just the overall big picture in general. How will he be remembered 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now? How will people remember Barack Obama? And in terms of that, I think I'm going to start off with the positives. And I think if you're going to start about talking about the achievements of the Obama administration, you basically have to start out with Obamacare. Now, was Obamacare perfect? No. I think the most sensible healthcare system for the United States would be a single-payer system, like the rest of the civilized world seems to have. But, I mean, this is a step in the right direction, and it's better than what we had before. I mean, you have 20 million people that have health insurance that didn't have it before. Now children are able to stay on their parents' health care plans until the age of 26, and people can't be discriminated against by insurance companies due to pre-existing conditions. So was it perfect? No, but as I said before, I do think it is a step in the right direction. Another positive of his administration was the Iran deal. And I think this was maybe even ranks above Obamacare because, you know, this deal kept us out of a war with Iran. And if you thought the war with Iraq was disastrous, if you thought that was bad, a war with Iran would have been that much worse. And if we had a Republican in office, you can almost guarantee that we would have gone to war. So I think that was a very important achievement, and I think that it averted a very serious and dangerous war that we would have found ourselves bogged down in that would have been much worse than Iraq. And another positive of his administration, I believe, was what he's been doing lately in the waning weeks of his presidency with the pardons and commutations that he's been granting to non-violent drug offenders primarily. And I think that's important because, you know, if you ask me, I think the war on drugs is a complete and total failure, and the evidence supports that. And I don't think we should have people sitting in jail, you know, putting in life sentences or, you know, 30, 40 years for selling drugs. And I think that's an important service that he's performing in the, you know, final weeks of his presidency. And another positive of his presidency is basically just the overall economy. I mean, when he took over from President Bush in 2009, you know, the country was bogged down in the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. And now look at us 8 years later. You know, the stock market is at an all-time high. Unemployment is at historic lows. And, you know, the economy overall is just doing much better than it was back in 2009. So with that said, I mean, now we can focus on the negatives of his presidency. And then there were many of them, and I think the biggest overall negative of his presidency was that he failed to achieve the fundamental transformative change that he promised in 2008. He failed to deliver on the biggest promise that, you know, compelled people to vote for him in 2008. I mean, if you look at, you know, the state of Washington and politics in general, it's just business as usual. Nothing has changed. It's all the same. So that to me is his biggest overall failure. And I would also say another failure of his presidency is, despite the fact that I mentioned earlier as a positive to his presidency was the state of the economy, you know, in the stock market and things like that in general. Nevertheless, most of the gains that have been made in those areas have gone to the top 1%. You know, normal everyday people aren't seeing these gains. And, you know, that's a big problem. And, you know, another negative that is tied to that is the fact that I also said that unemployment is at an historic low, and it is. But, I mean, a lot of these jobs that are supposedly being gained are part-time jobs or contract jobs with no benefits. So, I mean, you know, you can't really give him too much credit for those jobs being added to the economy. So, I mean, in conclusion, I would say his presidency was overall a success. I think that, you know, it's just overall disappointing that he was not able to deliver on the change that he promised, though. If you look at Washington, it's business as usual, and he didn't deliver on that transformative change that was promised to us. But I mean, he was a good manager, he was a good president, and I think his legacy will overall be very positive. I think he'll be looked at in a light similar to that of Bill Clinton. And I mean, if you look at Bill Clinton right now, he's almost 20 years out of office, and his popularity is basically at an all-time high. And President Obama is exiting office, with very high approval ratings, as was Bill Clinton. So I think Barack Obama's legacy will be very similar to that of Bill Clinton.